every time they do it, well, God must be getting me, God must be getting me. You know, there are those around. But most of us who have pretty good theology and walk with God, I'm thinking of my own self. I don't remember when I had that cold, the last thing in my mind is God's doing because I'm sick. That just can't be. Why? I'm just such a sweetheart. It just couldn't happen. Amen. And sometimes, I'm telling you, God will do what it takes to get your attention. I think of refurnishing. You ever go down and buy a piece of that furniture and you're going to redo it? That's a good thing to do. Go down to an antique shop, find an old piece. You ever do that? First thing you got to do is take off all that old varnish and stuff. Boy, you think that's easy? It's not easy at all. I imagine when we got saved, the Lord thought, good grief. This guy's got so many layers of puke on him, I'm going to have to be chiseling his hide forever just to get him down to nothing. Amen? Most of what God does in my life is not building. He ain't got that far yet. He's removing. Amen? And I tell you, no one will stand around naked. No one will stand around exposed. See, even a piece of furniture can look good when it's that, but when you start removing it, then you see all the flaws and the cuts and the nicks and so forth. But you know what you do? You take it off, and when you finally get it off, I'll tell you, then you start the old sandpaper. Boy, you use rough sandpaper. Hey, you ever have God just sanding your hide? Amen. Hey, that don't feel so good. And you know what you do? You sand that off. You get in every nook, every cranny. I mean, you have to get in the little areas. All of that. When you get it done, then you're going to put a thing of varnish. You know what? If you've ever refurnished anything, you put that first coat of varnish on, and then you take sandpaper and basically take the whole thing off again. And then you varnish it again, and you take that off again. And then you use that steel wool, and you get down to the fine stuff, and that goes on. That's what God's doing to us. In the spiritual realm, he's transforming us like Jesus Christ. Romans 8:29. And I tell you, he's got his hands full, but he's never lost a case. You're going to be like Jesus Christ, and so am I. And that's why throughout eternity, you're going to be a trophy of grace. I'm going to be one of the, I'll tell you, I don't think I would not be, if I didn't get one reward. I mean, wouldn't surprise me in the least. But I'll tell you one thing, I know I'll be in glory. Like I am down here, I will be a trophy of grace. People, I tell you, people marvel that I'm saved to start with. Amen. People marvel that I'm behind a pulpit preaching. Amen. People are going to marvel when I'm in glory. Amen. Folks, listen. We are all trophies of grace. And that's all that's going on. Amen. But God's going to work on you, and God's going to sand you, and it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. Amen. Well, that's all. He's walking among us. He's God. Nobody else is God. Your boss ain't God. Your wife ain't God. Your husband ain't God. Your children ain't God. You ain't God. He's God. You take orders from Jesus. Amen. And if you don't, get ready. Some of you are sitting here tonight, you can't hear a word I'm saying. You know why your buzzer's going off. From the moment you got, and it's just driving you crazy. Folks, it's not going to stop till you confess it. You know, in the old days of the West, I admit, I like to read these things. They, to me, are fascinating. I used to wonder about, how the old days, they would take a horse. Well, you take a wild horse. It ain't like the movies, by the way. You see the old flicker or whatever they go. I'm always laughing. I like the Lone Ranger. I always laugh when he got silver. Stick a carrot out there, pour a rope over his head. You love me, don't you, boy? And you ride him around. And, he might kick a little bit, but it's not too bad. Real horse would kick your head in. Real horse would stomp your feet. He'd bite your hand off if you tried to slap him side of the head. I mean, he's like my dog, only bigger. I mean, they don't do that. You know what they used to do in the Old West? They'd take that wild, vicious, uncontrollable, biting horse, and they'd tie it to a little burro. That's right. And you know what? They just let it go. And when they left, that horse was dragging that burro around, kicking him, and just, you know what? 2-3 days later, they'd both come back. The burro would be quietly leading, and that big old horse would gently be submitting behind him. You know what the Lord did? Listen, He's just hooked you up with Jesus. He's the burro in your life. And we're uncontrollable, and we spit, and we're uncontrollable, and we're angry, and we're doing and kicking and fighting. Well, I want to tell you, Jesus just hangs on. And you know what He's doing? He's breaking us of our self-sufficiency, and it's working. Because before you know it, I tell you what, He's going to have you following Him and surrendering to Him and being broken. And that's really what you want anyway. You can't do nothing with a wild horse. Can't ride him. Can't do any work. Well, you get that thing trained. They got a reverse on them and everything else. Remember old Ed had horses out here. Man, go out there and that horse would go backwards and sideways. It was really cool. Amen. You can do something. That same God with us. God can't do anything when we're wild and unpredictable and we act like a fool all the time. God's got to control us. God's got to break us of ourselves. How's He going to do that? He's going to do it through a whole lot of ways. And folks, He'll use sickness, and He'll use circumstances, and He'll use pressure. He'll use knotheads from the pulpit. That's why people, all the time I have people leave. Well, I ain't staying here. You know all it is? Their buzzer went off, and they're blaming me instead of God. But I tell you what, I tell you, it's kind of funny in a way. They don't like me, so they leave. But in my mind, I can see a burro tied to them. And they'll kick off. I'm getting out of this church. You ain't getting out of Christ. And they'll go. And I've had them come right back after a couple of years, and their heads down, and they're a little bit humbler and all that. Amen. And I tell you, I've left without leaving myself. You don't have to leave to leave. Amen. But that little burro, he's still there. And I'm going to be coming in because it hurts. Keep kicking against him. Amen. Well, let's stand. Your buzzer's going off.